Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
This week's episode is Purposefully Painful Out Loud, and it's with Bre and Bee. So grateful to have you, Bre, with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I mean, we're the ones that, get to enjoy your presence. So this episode is going to be kind of the history of Bre and I, how far back, our friendship and relationship go. And then, the history of Chasing the Rainbows, because we've never really dived into all the different things that we have to offer. We briefly mention, in every podcast we have daily support services, but what does that look like, right?
Yeah.
And how did they come to be? I think that's huge too, to kind of understand how we developed what we did and what we're doing, for survivors across our nation.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this episode. I think it's going to be very meaningful. And I think sometimes when you understand the history of how something became to be the way it is, it puts more, it helps you understand, and it helps you see where it came from. So I think it's great. I can't wait.
I know it almost puts like a personality and like a characteristic behind, the organization and stuff. And the good thing about us is, we've been around now for a year and a half, but we're still on ground level. We built a strong foundation, but, we're building up and we're learning as we go. But, it's just an interesting organization that, other people can become a part of and, be alongside us in this mission. So,
definitely. Yeah,
so true.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know, Bre, do you want to start or do you want me to about our history? Because we go long back.
We go way back to elementary school, actually. I think it was third grade. Am I right? Third grade?
Too. Yeah.
We went to, we met in third grade, and we were together all through elementary school, middle school, high school, graduated together. We went to the same church together. Yeah. So we were in, Sunday school classes together, and we go way back. So actually, our siblings dated at one point.
I know. How crazy is
back
that?
in high school. Yeah. So we have a pretty extensive history, but like a lot of relationships, it kind of fell off after high school, and we lost touch. And we really didn't see or talk other than being Facebook friends, right?
Right. That's what happened. Life.
Yeah. For probably, I don't even know how many years, like,
gosh,
15?
Oh, it has,
maybe,
right? It's back
like that.
Yeah, probably, because your brother used to sometimes take my sister back and forth to college when they were just friends at that point. And stuff. And that was probably the last time that I saw your family and things like that. And then, switching churches or, and then us not going. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I got married and then I switched churches, and life just happens, and you get busy, and we just kind of lost touch. But then you want to tell them what happened to reconnect?
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm just so grateful, right, for you in my life, for you to be a part of Chasing the Rainbows alongside of me, alongside the organization, alongside all the other volunteers, because it really does take a community of us, right? And, when we lost our daughter, Brooke, I waited to put anything out on social or anything like that. And then when I finally mustered up the courage to do so, and I didn't know how people were going to react or, because social media is so fake to me, like, in my opinion, right? Like, then like on my personal page, because it was like, I only ever really showed like the highlights and the really good things that were happening. Right. And I never really like showed like truly what life is about and like the difficult times and all of that. So I finally put it out there that we gave birth to Brooke, and she was born so early and young. And then also that we lost her in the same breath. And when I did that, Bre was the first person to send me a private message. Hey, my husband and I went through so many losses, and explaining her story and just pouring her heart out to me. And it was the first time that I felt a sense of connection to somebody with this, because it was so lonely and isolating when we went through it. I left the hospital that day asking the hospital workers, asking the bereavement coordinator, asking nurses and doctors in the NICU, like, okay, what support services are out there? And they gave me a list. And it was like a once a month daily support group or once a month support group here. And it was in person, or like once a month support group there. And that was it. And
Yeah.
then here's books. And I was like, I can't read right now. I can barely even like listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
And it was all these things, and they were just all thrown at me in the hospital. It was very overwhelming. They had a bunch of different like comfort bags and baskets from people, like organizations and stuff. And I was just like, okay, this is like a lot of stuff, which
Yeah.
we were grateful for and are grateful for today because, that's all we have. But it was like no one really was there to talk to or like relate to. And so that's when Bre just stepped in and reached out, and boom, like so understanding. Like, one, everything I was going through after loss, and I was texting Bre about it, like, you just understood. You
Yeah.
like validated me. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is all I need. Like, this is,
Yeah.
and we made plans a couple times to meet up. And I was like, look, I just can't today. Or like I was feeling a certain way, or like had to do something, for my son, because we were trying to take care of him too during the loss, and all those things. So it was just like finally someone gets me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, where has this been? Like,
Yeah.
why isn't this readily available to everybody? Where they
Agreed.
can have an organization that is this and it's daily.
Yeah.
And all of us, because it's happening way too often. There's over 1 million miscarriages a year in the US. There's, you know, 1 in 6 dealing with infertility. There is 24,000 stillbirths, 21,000 infant loss, something like, those numbers, don't quote me, people, but it's just those numbers are so many. Like, where
Yeah.
is everybody?
Staggering. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, why, if there are so many, why are people not talking about it? And like, really, when we went through our losses, I kind of made it my mission
Right.
to
Your
help
personal
other
mission.
women. Yeah, it really was my purpose, because I went through such a painful period. It was like 5 years of
Yes.
6 losses, infertility, like just so much stuff, and it was so isolating, and I felt so alone, and I
Yes.
felt crazy because my feelings weren't being validated. So I think for me, my goal when I hear of somebody, especially somebody I've known my whole life, just went through this horrific
Right.
experience and lost their baby, I initially was like, I need her to feel seen and heard and
Oh,
validated.
Bre,
Like,
you're
and
like,
I
take it.
think
Yeah.
that's the goal. And I think that's like the overarching goal of chasing the rainbows in general, is just for people to be seen, heard, and validated, and just to not feel alone.
Exactly. And, when we met up for lunch the first time, it's crazy because it was on October 15th of
Yeah.
2022. I will never forget, we both did not know that that was Infant and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Day.
Yep.
And we were just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It wasn't until after the fact that we realized what day it was. And it just
Yep.
like shot shivers up our spines. Like, all these different like dates and things. And it's almost like I always seek a connection out to Brooke, and I felt like that was something that she gave me, right? Like, "Here, mom," like, on my first day of that celebrating, or sorry, not celebrating, but, acknowledging that day, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and later on, I didn't even know that that day existed until that year, because that was our first time going through in
Yeah.
October. I didn't know that until Bre messaged me later and was like, "You're not gonna believe what day this is." And I was like, "Oh my goodness," I just felt like this was a gift that she gave me, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Yep. 100%. And I just felt that conversation. I'll never forget our conversation sitting
Mm,
in Panera Bread,
yes.
just pouring our hearts out to each other and crying and like relating
Oh,
to one another. And it was, at that point, I had been several years out from my losses, but it was so therapeutic for me, and healing for me to express myself and have someone listen to me, but then also to be on the other end of that and to listen to you and to allow you the time and space to express yourself. And um both parts equally healing for me, and
yeah.
I'll never ever forget that day. That was, I
Oh
feel
my
like
god.
that was the day that we both, in we've known each other our whole lives, but I've
Yes.
never felt connected to you like I did that day. And like, we had this common thread, on a deeper level than we've ever had. And we were able to lock arms and
Yes.
kind of walk forward together, because we haven't been able to, we've been, on our separate journeys, we've been kind of held back and felt
Yes.
alone. And like for the first time, it's like we stepped into the light together and just was like, okay,
Absolutely.
we're gonna do this.
Right. And then I remember saying to you, and, because you've been involved with the community, loss survivor community, you have served on different nonprofit boards. You
Yeah.
searched and were searching, for different
Yes.
nonprofits and things. And it was crazy to think in 2021, well, 2022, when we got together, or wait, it was October of 2021.
I think it
Yeah.
was 2021. Yeah. When you
Yes.
said
I'm
that, I was like, I
sorry.
think
Yeah.
it's
2022.
21.
We were a month into Chasing the Rainbows at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, so October of 2021. And I was like, how do we not have more services at this point? Like, how are we
Yeah.
here?
I
And you
really
were like, exactly.
struggled. Yeah,
Yes.
because um the only available support was a county away
Yeah.
and an hour drive. Um and I'm just sitting here, like, we have these huge health systems in our area, and like
Yeah.
there's no support. There's
I know.
I have to drive an hour away for a once a month support group? Like, support isn't needed. I mean, I think that's great. Like, I think having those support groups are wonderful, but like I needed something on the daily. I need something
Yeah,
to like I might be okay today, but I might not be okay tomorrow. And like I need
exactly.
something that's gonna, who can I talk to on those last minute, like I need somebody. And there was absolutely nothing. And it
No.
just blew my mind.
It really does, and that was where we were at, because I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, my grief doesn't just fit into this once a day, or once a month, support group." Like, I might
Yeah.
be feeling okay, and honestly, life is really overwhelming after loss, especially in the beginning, and, like, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out going back to work, figuring out life, figuring out who I am now, and so when
Right.
I, like, uh, you know, I want something that's convenient, not something I have to drive to, and then also, like, make sure I look okay for, because I'm already beating
Mm.
myself up. I'm already feeling like guilt, shame, and blame playing that game. And it's like all these things. And then, like, I remember driving one time to an in-person support group and I could not get out of my car. And then I felt even worse for doing
Yep.
that because there was only a couple cars in the parking lot. And I was just like, I
Hmm.
can't do this. And even though I know there's other survivors in that room, I was like, virtually to me, like I can hop on and then hop right off if I don't feel comfortable. And I'm also
And you're
in
in
a
the safety of your own home. You're not
yes,
like in a
yes.
place where you feel so, everything's
Yeah.
foreign. Like, that is a very uncomfortable place to be.
And I think something that's huge too, like you said, Bree, is that like immediate connection, right? You and I have
Mhm.
never connected on that level. We were basically like surface level friends, right?
Yeah.
And not trying to minimize what we were, but
Yeah.
that's what happens, right? And then we were basically acquaintances, always felt very warm about each other and stuff. But
Yeah.
we when we came back together, it was like this deep connection rooted in us
Yeah.
after we became loss survivors. So it's really just getting in a room of similar loss survivors, but in a comfortable, safe, secure place. And that is my home base.
And I
100%.
I want every single survivor to, when they join our support groups, I want them to find their Bernice, or I want them
Yeah,
to find their Brie,
that's
like
right.
that person for them. And honestly,
Yes.
like that's the place to do it, because you're going to get connected with people who you have similar stories and stuff like that, and like you find that person or people that you can cling to. And
Yeah.
that's it's not just bringing awareness, it's also uniting.
That's exactly right, and that is what it's about, and I know that we keep throwing around daily, right? So, like, we make this readily accessible to fit into everybody's schedules, to fit in, like, because we don't wanna stress people out, like, "Oh, I have to
Yeah.
go to this support group this day. I signed up for this, like, 6-week group." First of all, these are free.
Yeah.
We want them to be free because nobody needs financial burden after this, right? They're trauma informed because these are traumatic losses that we're going through, infertility,
Yeah.
pregnancy loss, infant loss, all of it. And then on top of that, it's also like, how can I be with like peers in the same room? Because
Yeah.
that's what we want is that connection. I
Yeah.
I don't want to hear from somebody else who hasn't been through it, to be honest, because you don't
Yeah.
get what I'm feeling. Now I get it, like, people have been through other losses, but people don't say things like they do to baby loss survivors. Like, no one says to you after you lose a parent, like, oh, you can always have another parent. But in baby
Yeah.
loss world, everybody's like, oh, you can always have another baby. And it's like, So like I need to be with people
Yeah.
that get me,
Mm-hmm.
and say things that like, or just validate seen and heard, like we talk about.
Yep.
And
Yep. I
then
totally
it's
agree.
also right. It's like, if I get on and then I have to hop off or I'm squeezing it in between my lunch or like whatever,
Mhm.
like great. This is a convenient, like we want to make this as easy as possible to people feel that unity of others who are going through the exact same thing. It's so true.
Yep. Yep, as
Yeah.
convenient as possible and as
Right.
comfortable of an environment as possible, and, yeah, I agree, like, it is amazing how people say things like, how you said you can get a new parent, or, like, if your spouse dies, you can get a new husband, or what, like,
Yeah. Never
people
heard
would
that.
never say that to you.
No.
No, and yeah, just being able to talk through some of those comments, I think, too, and, okay,
Yeah.
how did you handle it when this person
Yes.
said this to you, and
Yes.
and there's things that come up on a daily basis, and I love the survivors that consistently come every day or
Yeah.
as often as possible, because they really can contribute to the group, and be there for others and listen, and share their stories, and it's just been so, even for myself, like I said, it's been 10 and 8 years since Landon and Emma, and like I still gain so much from those groups, just
Right.
listening to other people's stories.
Right. And like that's what we're trying to do. We want survivors that are years out from their loss or 30 years out and have never
Yeah.
grieved their loss or been able to because society didn't allow, survivors back then too. They were just like, okay, we'll try again next month or, you'll move on, you'll have, and it's like, this is finally, gaining it. But what did they do in silence? Like, how did they cope? Because they obviously were still going through it, feeling those emotions.
Yeah.
What did they do? And like, come and like join us and
Yeah.
help other survivors who are newly on their path because we all can learn from each other. And I feel like the amount of love and just connection that you feel in that room talking and sharing
Mhm.
just like does it like so much deeper. And I mean, this is only one of our support services, but this is the
Yeah.
foundation of how we came to be. Right.
Yeah, it really is, and I think, and we provide, the training for to be trauma informed,
Yeah.
and, just knowing that the person facilitating is trauma informed, and, they're there to just listen to, and, I think, a lot of our survivors that do wanna volunteer, I think they recognize that when they walked through it, they didn't have that kinda support, and they
Right.
recognize the importance of it, and they're like, "Hey, I went through some really hard times, and I would like to, use that pain and be purposeful
Right.
with it, and like give back, and
Exactly
be
right.
a facilitator in the support groups, or a mentor." We can touch on that next,
Yeah.
but I think it's so important, and I think it really does benefit you equally as it benefits other survivors.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I get more out of group, like,
Yes,
facilitating than, the people in the room
100%.
because, like, I come out and I'm like it gives me a healthy and safe outlet for me to put my pain to use, if that makes
Yep,
sense, and, like, because I
yep,
couldn't just sit with it because that was toxic for me.
yep.
I kept sitting in it, like, I'm drawing a blank right now. Complicated grief. I had complicated grief after losing
Mm,
Brooke and trauma, trauma responses and just so much, and it's like, this gave me a bigger purpose behind it than me
mm,
just, going down those rabbit holes because that was not healthy for me or safe. And
yeah,
so, you know, like you just touched on, Bre, we started with not just the support groups, but also the peer mentorship. And what that was about was, okay, well, how about we have, and it's a relationship between two, right? And it's
mhm,
somebody that is trauma informed trained who's going through our training and then putting them and pairing them with someone with a similar lived experience or similar story
yep,
to theirs and having, reach outs. And it's a two-way street, right? It can't just be the mentor reaching out all the time because if they're getting like very little responses or no responses, it's like we keep reaching out and say thinking of you, but it's for those moments that are very overwhelming and the survivor needs someone to talk to, that it's like, okay, they
yep,
know that we've been checking in, they know that we are here for them, they have our phone number. That's when you pick up the phone and call, or you pick up and text, and it's like,
yep,
okay, like we are there for each other. And it really is like, okay, how can we get through this together? And it's not like we ever get through it or over it. It's more
yeah,
like, how can we get through this moment together, the overwhelming
yeah.
moment, and process together, and you're heard, seen, and validated. And I can't say that enough because that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I mean, so like our support groups, we have several throughout the day. Like it's not just one a day. Like we have them
Correct.
throughout the day at
We
different
have 3,
times.
right.
3, yep. So we have that, but then there's that time in between. So like that is if you're having a moment in between that and you can't jump on group or whatever, you know, or let's say you're at work and you're having a moment and it's not an appropriate
Yes.
time to get hop on group, text your mentor and, hey, I'm having a really hard day. And I know a lot of the people that I mentor will just text me and say, like, this is a really hard day. I'm like, okay, what triggered you? Like, let's talk it through and
Yeah.
just kind of, having somebody to just verbalize your feelings to, who
Yes.
understands it. And you're not there to solve their problems. You're not there to, like, don't think that you have to have the answers. That's not the goal. The goal is to just be a sounding board that you can just listen
Yes.
and validate them.
And a big part of that too, and it's another service that we offer, we have a huge list of different resources. So if something triggered it, right? Let's say it's a financial thing. And because,
Mhm.
everything, like when we're already up here with, top, like we're already at 100 with like stress level and feeling overwhelmed, feeling emotional, going through it all, with our grief and trauma. And then we get something that's added on top of that. It's like my mind goes a million miles an hour in different
Yeah.
directions, and like I need someone to talk me down. So like something that really was spiraling for me like a month after was getting the declination on her insurance in the mail. Our
Mhm.
daughter that died,
Yeah.
like fine, and they were like, "Oh, she died, so she's off your insurance." Like how insensitive. And then
Mm.
getting these hospital bills and like different things that were showing up in the mail. And I was like, where's the financial support or help here, right? And
Yeah.
that's what's interesting because like we have these connections with different organizations and nonprofits, that we want to pair people with that offer different services that we're not offering. So then they just come to us and it's like, okay, I need this. And it's like, great, we have this, reach out to them and tell them that we sent you
Yeah.
or whatever, or you just reach out to them. And it's like, or
Yeah.
go through their application process, or here's this resource. And like even for the families too, like how do we support a baby loss survivor? Well, here's a list of things that you can do that's helpful, instead of asking them because they're going to say they don't know during this time, or
Right.
I don't know if they can process it, but don't put that on them. Like, come to us. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
So it is that, like, here's how to set up a GoFundMe. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. Like, this is what's helpful. But it's
Yeah.
being those resources, and we're supporting, infertility, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors from a
Yeah.
whole, like, on all outsourced resources too, like all their support system on how to handle this. So you can come together and be that community forum and safe space as
Yeah.
well outside of the group mentorship, and all those things.
Yeah, and I love that arm of what we do because it's,
Yes.
we are there for the survivor and their immediate needs, but we're also there to support them in all the other ways that you don't even think about when you first lose a
Yes.
baby. And then the family and the support system and just the community around them and saying, okay, here are some tools to help you
Yes.
and to help this person as they walk through this
Yes.
grief journey.
And here's how you do it, like
Yeah.
here's how you set up the
And here's
GoFundMe.
how
And I'm
you
not gonna
don't
tell
do
you.
it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, just do it for them. Don't ask, as
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I mean, some people want to be asked, so like, you gauge that. But it's like, here's how you do these different things. Like, which one do you think they'd appreciate the most? Or
yeah,
them. And it's like, just go ahead and do it, kind of thing.
yeah.
And it's true. Like, I would have loved a cleaning lady, to be honest. Like, that's one of
Yeah.
them.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes, for
Because oh my gosh,
sure.
my house was a disaster.
And
Well, thank goodness
meals
for my
for
parents and family showing up, but yeah.
meals for me were huge. Like having to not
Yes.
cook and
Oh,
worry
to
about
not
that. That
even
was fantastic. That was
fantastic,
definitely the
agreed.
most
And
helpful
just
thing for
showing up
me.
with it, like, knowing and just, like, being there, and it was like, "Great, thank you so much," you know?
Yep.
Just leaving it at the door too, it's not even, they
Yes.
bring me your
Don't
food.
knock. Don't yeah, to me,
Yeah.
like, don't put any pressure on them to have to feel like they gotta clean their house or I gotta
Yes.
entertain you now that you're here.
Yeah.
Like, don't you leave it at the front. Like, we actually had a cooler. I had somebody set up a
Right.
meal train. We had a cooler on the front, and the directions were drop it off between this time and this time,
Yeah.
place it in the cooler. Like, it is not a time I don't wanna socialize. I can barely
No.
even get out of bed. The last thing I
Yes.
wanna do is socialize.
I don't even wanna feel like I have to exactly right, and it is that, and, like, I don't need judged because 'cause I'm already judging myself
Yes.
enough,
Correct.
it's all
Yep.
of those things, right, and going through it. And right, that pressure, we just don't need the added pressure. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's that. And then there's also, in addition to those two support services, this podcast, Cried Out Loud, we want to do this because if survivors are driving in into from work or going somewhere that's going to be stressful for them, they can then listen to, because this podcast is all about what life is like, what living is like, what different
Yeah.
aspects that we never think about until we're going through them. They're there, and we have. I want to say, because we're in season 2, I want to say we have like 50 some episodes, or we're close to it. And so
Wow.
like there's different things, the holidays, connections, all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, all the overwhelming feelings, guilt, shame, blame, all of it. Like we just try. And if there's a topic that we haven't talked about and somebody wants to hear, and then we need to
Yeah.
get an expert for it, please write in and we'll find that and we'll do it.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Like we want to be there and offer this as an additional support. And honestly, there could have been times that I know this, like I wouldn't have wanted to show up to group or text my mentor. So this is a great way for, you to have your own space, but yet you can listen to a podcast and
Yeah.
you're not like, needing to engage with anybody else if you don't want to.
Yeah. No, I
So,
totally agree. And that's,
yeah.
And to the point of like wanting topics and stuff like that. I mean, Bernice and I both have our own unique perspectives, but like
Right.
our stories are different from your story. And like you
Right.
may have experienced something that we didn't. So we don't talk about it because we didn't experience it or know about it. So I think it's to hear from survivors and what did they struggle with,
Yes.
or, just to have that conversation, I think is
Yeah.
important.
And the world we live in is always evolving. So there's different
Yeah.
things happening with healthcare now, with insurances, different
Mhm.
things that, we didn't have to go through, Bre, or things
Mhm.
that are improving, or things that survive, or not improving. And so I
Right.
think it's really important to stay in the know. I mean, we find out about it in support group, but we always want to hear from other survivors' perspectives because it's so important. It's not about you and me. It's not Bee and Bre. It's about
Right.
what survivors need, not what you and I need. And that's why we offer this vast amount, which, we've only touched on a few, but yeah,
Yeah.
amount of services. And,
Yeah.
outside of the podcast, so we do trauma therapy, right? We have partnerships with different trauma therapists and we work through that for survivors to get in and get seen and get the help that they need outside of, having group, having mentorship, having, the podcast. This is another way too. And it's something that we're trying to grow and expand and, do this year, especially because we're trying to, always do better with these
Yeah.
services. And we're kind of in the hands of, therapists right now and, what that program does, how it grows. And so we're trying
Yeah.
our best on our end to, sustain that program. So that's
Yeah.
another big one too, is, getting the professional help that somebody needs when they're asking for it and seeking it. Because
Definitely.
I called around to 14 trauma therapists, told them my baby died in my arms. I could pay out of pocket if they don't accept my private insurance, and couldn't get a call back. And
Wow.
so, that was the only help really that I could find. And I was like, I'm trying to pay somebody here to help me, and I couldn't get
Yeah.
it. So,
Wow.
it is all that. So like that's what we're trying to change to the kind of that, like how can we get a survivor connected, even if it's in a month,
Mhm.
to therapy because of their schedule and the therapist or whatever, but getting them in and them not having to make those overwhelming phone calls and keep
Yeah.
repeating your story on a voicemail. That's just
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's traumatic in and of itself.
absolutely, absolutely. So there's that. And then we also, have the online support communities. Now, for me, I had to stay off social media. I get that, but I also didn't have like a support community page that was private that I could go to and talk to somebody that I already was connected with. So when
Yeah.
groups not happening, like our virtual support groups, and you're in a room with the survivors, when that's not happening, you can go onto these online community pages, and it's pretty much the same people that are going to support groups that are mentors. We're all connected in that space that we can talk outside a group in a group
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah.
And that's important because I want to feel
Yeah.
connection.
I know. I love it. Like I love going on that page and like you see somebody post their story and I would
Yes.
go to the comments and it's like flooded with comments of support and validation and like this happened to me, this is what I'm like, this is what this is meant to do,
This is
like this is
100%.
the whole goal of those social pages. And getting into those social pages is just to rally around one
Yeah.
another and have a place where you may not feel comfortable sharing exactly what happened to you and a picture or whatever it may be, but it's a safe place to do it within that group and you can feel safe there because you're surrounded by people who understand what you're going through.
Yeah, it almost like changes my mindset with social media. Like that's one of the positive things,
Yeah.
after loss is having this like, or if somebody can't make group that day, but they need to talk, or they
Mhm.
don't want to just reach out to their mentor, or they did reach out to their mentor and their mentor does have, other things going on. So like they need to talk to somebody, boom, there's that too.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
we also give them all the hotlines, like the maternal health line and things like that, and suicide hotline, crisis hotline, that's out there, through our government officials. And it's great too to have those resources. But it's like, where else can you go with other survivors? And that's it,
Yeah. Yeah,
really.
for sure.
And we want people to all come together and get connected. That's what it's about. We don't allow solicitation. We don't allow any of those things because we just want it to be a commonality of all of us. And like you feeling comfortable building these relationships and friendships in there, with other
Yeah.
loss survivors that get it. Um,
Yep.
yeah. And then, on top of that as well, we do coping care packages and we have different materials for survivors, when they don't want to reach out or they don't want to, do this, that, or the other thing that we have. It's like, okay, they can use our guided journals. They can, plant seeds in a garden to honor their baby. They can do a coloring book. We give them fidget spinners. Like we give them different various things that, you can sit there and talk through, work through, and
Mhm.
see what works for you. We try to give various items in there. So, because reading doesn't work for me, but it might work for somebody else. So why not give
Yeah.
them a book where they feel that sense of connection, right? And
Right.
like journaling might not work for me, but it works for someone else. And it's all of those things. And then you finding, your other things. It's all about having all these tools in our toolbox because one day journaling might work for me, the next it might not. And then
Yeah.
walking outside works for me. But we
Yeah.
won't know until we try it. So it's offering all those materials on top of it. And people don't, always think
And
about what they could use or try until they're in those moments. So like giving them those items.
I think it's just another way for us to, support and rally around them without being directly in contact with people. If they don't want that, they at
Yeah.
least see this package come to their door and they're like, okay, somebody is
Gets it.
acknowledging what I just went through. So I
Yes.
think that speaks volumes.
Absolutely. And they just get it, right? So that's the other area that we're looking to grow and sustain this year, right? And
Yeah.
then we also started doing yoga, breathwork, and meditation videos, and we're doing a once a month live session. Oh, and I say live, it's video, like, but it's person to person, right? It's with our instructor and she's running it live. And it is that. And she's trauma informed trained and she is a trained yogi and everything, and nervous system regulation and all of that, but it's getting it for free. So like we have a portal on our website. We give the survivors who are involved in our organization the password, and it allows them to go in there during those moments. Like if they just need to try to breathe or do nervous system regulation, or, I couldn't meditate. Meditation was not for me after loss because I couldn't sit still long enough and I couldn't quiet my brain,
Yeah.
or like, get it to focus on anything or not focus, I guess, is you get it. But yoga, I was like, oh, I would have loved to have done some stretches or like some breath work. And nervous system
Yeah.
regulation for me was the start of the breath work, right? So like working on all those things, but having access when I needed it. And some days it would work and some
Yes.
days it wouldn't, but having it in one centralized location, right? And like, here it
Yeah.
is. So
Again, convenient to when it's useful for you and at your convenience at the right
yes.
time, at the right moment. So it's nice to have that as another tool.
Right. And we're trying our best to get out there in the community, bring awareness around our free services. And we have them every day so people can fit it into their schedules. Also, when they're needing it, seeking it, wanting it, needing comfort, they're there,
Yeah.
and this is what it's all about because it's not, like I said, our needs, it's their needs. And I need it too. Let's not mistaken that. Like,
Yeah.
when I was pregnant after loss, I needed, because like we have three different sectors, right? Infertility and trying to conceive is its own sector, right? And then pregnancy and infant loss is its own sector. And pregnancy after loss is its own sector. Because when I was pregnant after loss, I couldn't be sitting in the, infant and pregnancy loss because I needed to be around others. It's not that I didn't go through that. It was like I had to be in a mood that day to be in the
Yeah.
infant and pregnancy loss. I needed to be in the pregnancy after loss to stay like, moving in that and not sitting with the other. But
Yeah.
now I need the infant and pregnancy loss again, because I need to
Yeah.
be in that. I need to talk about Brooke. I need to honor her out loud. I need to put that pain to use. And it is that for me.
Yeah.
So, and infertility and trying to conceive is its own thing. And, that was
Yes.
really stressful on my husband and I. And during that time, I wish we had that support group,
Yeah.
meeting during the week. And then also, technically you're going through a pregnancy loss, if
Yeah.
every month was a loss for us, right? And
Yeah.
Bree, I bet you felt the same every time I
Oh
got
yeah. Oh my
my
gosh.
time of the month,
Yes.
Luke came to town. It was like, man, here we go.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it was a loss. And so they can always, anybody going through that can always join the pregnancy and infant loss. And same with pregnancy after loss. So that's the number one support group that we have all the time, going on, and all the other ones too. But it's just nice because really you can intertwine or figure out which one you need when you need it, not me. Like,
Yeah.
it might work for me, it might not, but for you it might work, and it's all that.
I think that makes us very unique at Chasing the Rainbows because, a lot of people care for you immediately after the
Yes.
baby, and not even the days and months that follow, but then like beyond that, the trying
Yes.
to conceive again and okay, you get pregnant, and then the pregnancy, dealing with the pregnancy after you've had a loss is a whole monster in and of itself. And
Oh my gosh, yeah.
like following their journey throughout, like I think that is what's missing, and that's why we're doing this, because it's like it's not just, okay, let me give you this in the hospital and send you on your way, good luck, see you
Right.
once a month or whatever.
Yes.
We are alongside you in the journey, and it is a journey, and it is a lifelong journey. And I just love that part of Chasing the Rainbows, because I know nobody acknowledges the mess that
Mhm.
comes after loss, and the subsequent pregnancies and trying, and all that stuff is just it is hard, and we get that part of it too. And that's, we acknowledge the importance of being there for one another for that part of the journey.
And when I say like our society, right, I'm talking about like our workplaces. I'm talking about when we go out in public,
Mm,
crying is a natural reaction, just like pooping is, right? Like pooping,
yeah.
you got to do it every
Right.
day, right? And
Right.
like crying is a natural reaction to grief. But like when people
Yeah.
see you cry, like
Mm,
they like shut down, like it's very uncomfortable for people, but that's a natural reaction. So having a safe space that you can go to get that cried out loud, get it out, and
yep.
just like pour your heart. And even when you're having those joyous moments, and then all of a sudden you get
Yeah.
hit with guilt and like, all, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, like who else can I talk to about this than somebody that gets it, and it
Yeah.
really is all of that.
For sure.
Yeah. No, and it's years later, people don't understand it. They don't, bring up Brooke anymore really, unless I talk about her.
Yeah.
But they do with Chasing the Rainbows. And that's what's great, because it's like I'm with other survivors who get it, can understand why I'm still grieving, can understand why I'm still dealing with trauma response, like all of it, right? And it is
Yep.
that. So you're
Yep.
right, Brie. But yeah, so, for any survivor that's listening and wants to get connected, go to our website. It's the best and easiest way for us to get you connected. We also are looking, it's very easy for hospitals, maternal fetal medicine, OBGYNs, funeral homes, anybody serving in this community. We want to get loss survivors as quick as possible to get connected to our services so they know about us at least. It doesn't mean that they
Yeah.
need them, or they might not need them for years, months, weeks. But at least they know about us, right? Because they are free, they're convenient. We want to make it as easy as possible. And, we just want to continue to unite all of us. Like they're just happening way too often.
Yeah.
So anybody out there struggling or needing a resource or looking for something that's in our community, wants to get involved, wants to volunteer, put some pain behind or their purpose behind their pain, we're here for it all. Like we
Yep.
want, you to do whatever you need to do for yourself, because like some days it is just survival mode, at least for me still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other days, yeah, it's just different.
Agreed. Totally agree.
So, yeah. So, listeners, we are always with you, infertility, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors. Until next time, Bre, thanks for getting on here, telling about the history of our organization, how we all got started, our history, and it was just beautiful. So, thanks so much, Bre.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.